Yeah. So where are you located?
Denver, Colorado.
All right, I love it up there. Yeah, I went up to Castle Rock this summer.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Cool.
great up there.
What were you doing? Just visiting
I
people
had
or?
some friends live up there,
Uh-huh.
so we went up there for the fourth, and we actually went to Manitou Springs. We got married in 2019, and we were
Oh,
originally supposed to go to New Orleans, but there was a hurricane brewing, so we had to reroute everything
uh-huh.
and made our way up to Colorado Springs. And Manitou is kind of a special place. So,
Great.
yeah, it's good.
Yes.
I'm here in Kansas City, Missouri.
Right.
So, yeah.
My parents both, one went to college in KU and the other at KSU.
Okay.
So I've been to Kansas lots of times and Kansas City a couple times.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a surprising little place here. I think people it's unexpected for the Midwest. It's a pretty good arts and cultural hub, so it's good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, well, hey, it's great to meet you, and I want to begin our conversation with what we survived the last 3.5 years, getting through a pandemic. How did
hmm
you get through it, and how did it change you?
Actually, because I've been working at home since 2008, once I got over an initial couple of weeks where I was just frozen with fear or whatever. I got bored with it. I didn't have time to keep obsessing about it. So I just got back to work. And it turned out that I was actually better off than I interact with lots of people at different cities and counties around Denver too, because I have to approve my plans. I'm a civil engineer
Hmm.
by my trade. And I was actually better off than a lot of them were because they were used to going into the office all the time and having all that support and routine. And and I was already used to being alone and working alone and keeping myself motivated and going. So it was kind of interesting. I was actually sort of holding their hand a little bit
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
when we'd have to talk on a Zoom meeting. So for me, some good things came out of it. Excuse me. Number one is just Zoom in general.
Yeah.
And I know lots of families that have continued a tradition since then of getting together monthly or bi-monthly or whatever because they got started during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it was some good resources came out of it. And there was actually one event near the end of it that, or kind of in the middle, that helped me finish up my book. And and I came to a huge aha moment because of the pandemic, but it was indirect.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I sound a little bit under the weather because I had a cold. This is the second time I've been sick in about 6 years. And
Wow.
I never got sick the entire time during that three
Okay.
years.
I gotcha.
So
Yeah, interesting. So before we get so we'll talk about your book, but I want to kind of get
uh-huh.
into exactly what you do for a living. So I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day, and one of the
Okay.
kids is curious and asks you, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Okay. I'm glad you said third graders because once I talked to some preschoolers, I thought I was getting across that I wasn't a trained engineer,
Yeah.
that I do a different kind of engineering. But then a few days later, I saw one of the moms in the store and she said, "My son tells me that you drive trains." And um, and I'd understand the third graders because I didn't really even know what engineering was until I was like a sophomore in college.
Yeah.
So it's about figuring out how the slopes will go there. Or when you're riding your bike down the street, you can't have the road being going like this, or you'll end up falling off your bike.
Yeah.
So somebody has to use their arithmetic or math skills to make sure that it's a smooth curve to go over a hill or whatever. So we try to make things smoother as we go about our daily life. And if something has been well designed, which is what I call my work, you probably don't even notice that it's there because it just works seamlessly.
Yeah.
And everything that we've ever used, every toy we've ever played with, every car we've ever ridden in, every hotel we've ever stayed in has had lots of engineers working on it because we just try to take science and math and put them into our everyday life with things that work well.
So when you were in the third grade, what was your dream? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, I just knew all the way through first year of college that I was going to be an artist.
Okay. Okay.
And then I when I got there, I I thought, how am I going to make a living? I don't really want to be a teacher. There's lots of other artists that are better than me. So I made my way to engineering slowly. And I've been
Yeah.
doing that ever since. But since my book came out, I've been making lots of videos about my book. So I'm getting back to my creativity. And of all the things I've done in my life, which is many, this is the most wonderful thing for me that I've ever done, making videos. So I'm getting back to my creative roots.
For sure. So you obviously have a right and left brain. So
Uh-huh.
take me back to where you were born and raised and how all of like being in art and being in engineering, how did all of those seeds become you?
I I grew up moving about every 6 months to a year. My dad worked for an oil company,
Okay.
and my mother was a stay-at-home mom, which was my dad's preference. She was very intelligent, creative. She was trained as a high school teacher, actually, and she was always doing um, crafts and different art projects to try to use up her massive intelligence without dying of boredom. And so I grew up with all kinds of creative things happening. Like we always had a dark room at my house, and wherever we went, the first 5 years of my life, I lived in a trailer that was 8 feet wide and 43 feet long. So 344 square feet for a family of four. And the average one bedroom apartment these days is 760 square feet. So we never we never seemed that crowded. So I just have to assume we didn't have very much stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I think I was just born with the left brain and the right brain. I never did really like mathematics, but I was always pretty good at it. And so when I was in college, it was big women's lib days. And I thought, ooh, I should do a man's job just to, be a good woman.
Yeah.
And later I thought, why did you do that? But it turns out I'm actually pretty good at it because I have a very tedious brain. Sometimes I notice subtle differences, and that's kind of what you have to do to get your engineering plans approved, and also to create things that are safe, is you have to notice these subtle differences and correct them.
Yeah.
So that part of my natural personality turned out to be very helpful. But I have lots of creativity and imagination and all that jazz. So sometimes that gets me in trouble. Not really.
Yeah, I get it. What's been the best advice you've ever gotten?
The best advice, when I was in college, believe it or not, I got to hear Buckminster Fuller speak in person.
Yeah.
And he walked across the stage holding a little egg in a spoon. And he said the tensile strength of this egg is much more than any steel building, with the amount of weight that it holds inside. Perfect, just the shape of it. I mean, he was the geodesic dome guy. But he said you should always be a generalist instead of a specialist, because you'll have that many more opportunities in life. And that sounds good, right?
Yeah, I love it. I really,
So that,
the whole thing paints a
uh-huh.
beautiful picture. I love it.
And
So, oh no, go ahead.
I've written 4 books. This is my fourth one. So I I've always gravitated towards making things that are beautiful. And when I work on my engineering stuff, I'm working on either a white or a black screen with lots of different colored lines on the screen. And that I love color, so that makes it happy for me. The
Yeah,
first 20 years, all I did was do stuff on paper with red pencil, and then the drafters would take it and turn it into a drawing. And then once I learned how to do the software that makes the drawings, then my whole world opened up because I just had all these colors available.
yeah, that's great. So, what, as a writer, what was the first book that you ever read that really opened up the door to you to loving reading or wanting to write yourself?
I can't remember the first one, but when I lived in when I was a little kid, you didn't teach the kids how to read until first grade. It wasn't like now. And I lived in a little town in Utah at the time, so I didn't learn till first grade. And then I was just like, it was my escape from my difficult life of moving all the time and making friends and then losing them quickly because we'd have to leave. So I just like vanished into the world of reading.
Yeah. So,
And
who's been a hero for you in your life?
a hero,
Yeah.
I have a great aunt that she was pretty sassy but very, very sweet, a very good woman. And she inspired me to, I tend to be a little more on the quiet side, but she was pretty boisterous. So I learned to bring out my sense of humor partly because of her. And I actually think that's one of my best gifts now. I don't take things nearly as seriously as I used to in my 20s.
Yeah.
And so she was one of my inspirations.
So if you could meet anybody alive right now on the planet that's an inspiration that you admire, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
There's a man named Michael Neil, Neill. Have you heard of him?
Uh-uh.
Okay. Well, he's in the life coach department of professions, and he wrote several books. One of them was called Super Coach, and another one is called Creating the Impossible, which sound like, kind of silly titles, but he opened up my idea about the world of thought and
Yeah.
how we get all concerned about what we're thinking. First of all, you can't control your thoughts. You can't just be, I'm gonna think positive all the time, because we think about 70,000 thoughts a day, and there's no way to keep them all positive. The more you focus on it, the more you're going to go the other way. So he said, every moment is just deciding whether I should keep doing this thing or should I do something different. And so we get all concerned about whether we're following our path or finding our purpose or whatever. And he said, just aim to do good things in the world and you'll keep moving in that direction. But don't get too hung up on your thoughts and whether you're thinking a bad thing or not, because it isn't the first time you think a thought that it gets you down. It's the 50th time or the 500th time in a row that it could start to impact you. So just kind of like, let it go.
Yeah.
Continue on to let your focus go to something else, and you can stop holding yourself back
Yeah.
that way. There's tremendous power in it.
Absolutely. So what is your motivation every day to do the work that you do? What gets you out of bed? What gets you to evolve and to achieve and to get things done? What is that for you?
it's it's just, I don't know, we get all hung up with our we get I heard a good line the other day that said, the more possessions you own, the more your possessions own you.
Yeah.
And I think back to the time when I had so few things when I was a little girl, yet I was still as happy as I could be. And well, and most of us do better, whether we think we do or not, in organized surroundings. So my book is about not just decluttering your stuff, but also decluttering your mind, because usually it's the mind clutter that puts the stuff clutter in place in the first place. And then sometimes your physical body is cluttered up too if you haven't been exercising very much, or if you've been just only eating junk food for a while, you get kind of sluggish. So there's lots of different ways to declutter your life. And then you get this exhilaration that if you've ever decluttered a closet, or even sorted out your glove compartment in your car, you get exhilarated, and that's a rush of endorphins, the
Yeah.
pain-killing chemicals that your brain sends out.
Yeah.
And I discovered in the course of my last few couple of years of writing the book, and also through the pandemic, that those endorphins are good for your immune system. So since a lot of people are worried about their health all the time, there's something that you can do that's in your own power. And I realized at the very end that you don't even have to declutter. You just have to bring up the endorphins,
Yeah.
which you can do of
Yeah.
your own accord. So I think about all the books that I love, and there's some that are just amazing. One of the greatest ones I've just been reading is Playing the Quantum Field. And the author says it is way easier to go to the dark side of your thoughts and kind of low energy thoughts of, I'm not good enough, because it's comfortable, and it takes some actual effort to get out of it into, well, I'm not going to make a judgment about this situation. I'm going to wait and see what happens. Or she has black holes and breakthroughs at the opposite end of a spectrum. And she said, we spent a lot of time over here with foregone conclusions and loops and magnets. We're over in this part. but it takes effort to get just to neutral and then get to the positive side. And that's where all kind of wonderful things can start happening in your life. So people don't realize how much power they have. But what I was saying about this book is it it usually comes down to one idea that you take out of a book, even if there's dozens of ideas. So if I could get out one idea, it would be that one, that you can change your health and you can change your outcomes by changing your mood, basically changing how you're feeling
Yeah,
and picking a different path and just, hamster wheel.
absolutely. That's fascinating. So let me ask you this. You had mentioned you were different in your 20s. Let's say you have a dream tonight and you
Mhm.
run into that version of you, say at 20 years old, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained at this point in your
Mhm.
life. What advice would you dispense on that young version of you?
I say, you're so smart, and take take this take this one piece and you'll just be unstoppable. That people are fascinating and they're endlessly fascinating, and don't you be judging them, because you're also judging yourself. Every time you throw out something ugly into the world, you're doing the same thing to yourself. So get rid of all that stuff and look around and see what's really there,
Yeah,
which is, the world is magnificent.
absolutely. So let me ask you this. If a time machine pulled up in front of your house and you could go anywhere in history and see one event with your own eyes, where are you going to go?
I would probably like to go to New York City on the day that they had the parade after World War II was over,
Yeah,
because I just love transformations, where that's why I love to see a messy house before and then the after part,
yeah,
when people have let go of things. But the transformation from war to peace is is pretty glorious. So I love to see that. I almost prefer that something was ugly before, and then somebody got inspired maybe by something I did, or I helped them or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's beautiful. So to build a beautiful house from scratch and have it just perfect the way you want it doesn't appeal to me nearly as much as taking some poor, decrepit, broken down house and transforming it into something new.
yeah.
So it's that's what I would do. I'd go back to some, and I'm really glad that I watched some of your podcasts, because I'm anticipating these questions.
Right, good. See, you did your homework. I
Otherwise,
love it.
I would have
So,
been, what?
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So, of all of the things that you've done in your life up to this point, what are you the proudest of?
You mean besides raising my sons,
Yes.
who are just fantastic human beings at this point,
Yeah.
and always were? I'd say getting the books written and published. Like the first one I wrote was called The Melting Pot Book of Baby Names, and it was written in 1987, and it's still available as an ebook with a different name on Amazon. So I'm still getting a little bit of royalty, about this much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you write a book and get it published, nobody can ever take it away from you.
Yeah.
They can take your children away or whatever, but if they, unless they go out and destroy 20,000 copies of your book, they can't ever take that idea away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my second and third books were about xeriscape, which is low water landscaping, and one of them was more like a textbook, and then the later one was much more beautiful. And I love the visual of the beauty of how low water landscape can be.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, your readers,
Mhm.
everyone that's known you, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a kind, intelligent, friendly person who's pretty open-minded and not into judging people. So super creative, like off the charts. And I endeavor to enjoy life as much as I can, from coming from a somewhat cautious background. Like I kind of, out of fear or whatever, I kind of closed in on myself. So one of my two sons and I are the two quietest people among our family, our local family of about 20 people, but we're okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you got to think it out. So if anyone wants to pick up your books, reach out to you, learn more about you, anything about your world, where can they go?
clearthespace.com. That's CLEARTHESPACE.com. My book is called Clear the Space, Feel the Rush. That's the endorphins that I was talking about.
Yeah.
And I do lots of videos on TikTok. I'm starting to do a little bit on YouTube and Instagram, but mainly I've done TikTok.
Good deal. You put so many wonderful ideas out during this interview. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your story. It's been wonderful. So have a great holiday. Have a great 2024. And thank you again for taking time out today.
Great. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you. Take care.